The radio we have today is this Ultra Transistor. It's a Model 6128 from 1966. Now, Ultra isn't something that I'd seen many of their radios or whatever, and this company still exists, but it's in a completely different business now. It does a lot of aerospace and defence electronics. It's one of the country's key suppliers of that, and of course we've sold it to the Americans. And there's a competition investigation going on about that at the moment. And back in the day, though, they started off doing other sorts of things, and at one point they made radios. Now, by the time this one was made, their radio making business had been transferred to the British Radio Corporation, which owned brands like HMV, Marconi, and Ferguson. So this doesn't really have a lot of relationship to that original company or the company as it is now. It's an interesting set, though. It's not completely wooden case, which obviously needs a bit of work on it to bring it. It's got a bit faded over the years. Pretty solid thing, though. The aerial's still in a reasonable state, I think, which is often a problem, if the aerial doesn't work anymore, or you have to get another one for it. I've taken the back off it already because the screws were a bit of a pain to get out, but if I lift this wooden thing off the back, you can see there's a space here for the usual PP9 battery, but unfortunately no connector for the negative terminal, so we'll have to replace that bit. And yeah, it's a bit dusty inside, but it looks pretty solidly put together. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is get a better battery connector on that, and we can plug it in and see if it works. Okay, well, I had a PP3 connector lying around on the bench, which I didn't have to go rummage around in drawers for a PP9, and that will work okay just to test it. Let's get some... Well, it makes a noise. That's always a good start. That volume control's a bit odd, doesn't quite go down to 0, so I've got that turned right down now, but I can still hear noise from it. So I can hear some signal already on VHF, that's good.
And where there's not enough space, tending to encroach on nature. You settlements and new dwellings where there are wild animals, and if you have contact between humans and wild animals, you get disease spillover.
Or you get eaten. So that sounds pretty good, actually. I think the FM does, certainly. Let's try medium wave. We get a lot of interference on AM in here, so...
Very quickly. The second war from 1999...
Yeah, so 5 Live is there. These switches are a bit iffy, I think. They might need a bit of a clean up and straighten out. Yeah, I can hear Radio 4 there as well. I won't bother with it. There's this Luxembourg, this one here, Lux. This is a band spread one that we've seen on other radios of the period, where the points here around the 200 metre mark are spread out a bit, so give you a bit easier tuning of things. When in the old days there were a lot of stations around then, it was difficult to tune down this end. Not so many now. So I think after a bit of a clean up, this should make a pretty good radio, really. Right, so I've got it all apart now. Speaker panel, this melted plastic front panel, so we can clean that up. Possibly replace this. Oh, I think that's probably okay, all that there. Speaker looks fine. A lot of dust around, so we can clean all that up. And on here, clean that scale up. I think we can do quite a bit of, quite a good job on this, really. Can't do anything about this melted bit, but it seems to still fit, so that should be fine.
Sounds like the 70s.
On BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
So this has cleaned up pretty well, really, and sounds pretty good. It's working on all wave bands. I won't demonstrate the long wave, medium wave in here because obviously there's quite a lot of interference. polished the wood up as far as I can, sanded it down a bit where it was a bit dirty and grubby. Looking around the back of it, the one thing I did notice was that although it definitely does require a PP9 according to the label, and I was using a PP3 to test it, PP9 doesn't fit in the hole in the bottom that's there for the battery. So at the moment you have to take the back off to change the battery, which is a bit of a pain. We should probably do some adjustment to that at some point. Also I need to secure that aerial a bit better. I think I missed a bit out there, or not quite tightened it enough. It's interesting that we have these sort of marginal engineering type things, which I think is often a feature of British stuff, similar to the way that this aerial is very close to some wiring here. They've not left much room for manoeuvre at all. So I got it all cleaned up the scale, put a little bit of glossy paper in, reddened up the pointer so it looks a bit nicer from the front. Put a bit of tip, you can't see it now because I put it back together, but this scale, there were a few bits where it was faded, so as well as putting the white glossy paper behind it, and I also put a bit of Tipex behind to bring out some of the white lettering a bit better, which is a fairly easy way of doing that when it's sort of just clear at the back and with paint on it. Then I put it all back together and it didn't work at all, which was a bit annoying, and I worked out there was nothing coming through the IF section here, and we've got the dreaded old AF series germanium transistors. So I tapped one of them and it started working, and then obviously I couldn't remember which one I tapped. I changed this one, still didn't work. Then I realised actually this one, it wasn't a tin whisker effect that I normally thought it was. It's just the fact there was a little bit of a short on the leads at the bottom because they stand quite proud of the board. So once I sorted that out, it's fine. I didn't have to find any replacement transistors for this. What else? Oh yeah, the volume control was an interesting one because that, if you remember, it didn't quite go down to 0 and it still doesn't. And also it was went from nothing to really very loud very quickly. Now I had another switch pot combination, but I only had one. It was 10k linear, and that made it even worse. I put this one back, and then I realised that they'd actually wired it incorrectly when it had been replaced before, but the wires had been put the wrong way round, which was one of the reasons it didn't work properly. But still, it was still very loud, I thought. So I don't know why that's happened, if something's drifted over the year, but in any case I just stuck a bit of extra resistance in there, and that's improved it quite a bit really in terms of its response, and you know, I think it's made it sound a lot better. So all in all, this has come back to life in a good way, I think. It's a radio which my daughter has agreed to have in her new house with her new daughter, so I'm hoping that my granddaughter will grow up listening to analog radio in the early years of her life. It can't hurt, can it? So yeah, that's it. I think it's worked out pretty well.